Great Scott. Great Scott. Great Scott.
Hello everyone, and welcome to another fabulous episode of Great Scott. I'm Scotty V. Thanks for watching. Continuing on last week's subject of disappointment, I want to talk a little bit about the reasons why I was personally disappointed. Before I get into spoilerific stuff or actual review of what is there in the movie, I wanted to talk a little bit about what I feel isn't there, and then what I feel is there that maybe shouldn't be there or is forced to be there. Joss Whedon was brought on board near the end of the process of the finishing of Justice League. From what we know, everything was already filmed. There was a possibility of anywhere from 2 hours and 40 minutes to 3 hours and 40 minutes of footage that was filmed when Zack Snyder was in charge of the project. Then he decides he has to leave, possibly because of the scrutiny, the negativity, the death threats, the just downright nasty things people were saying and people have been saying since even before a scene of Man of Steel was even shot, when he was announced as the man who would be making the Man of Steel movie, and then moving forward with other movies. It's just been, I'm certain, very stressful on the man. On top of that, and the reason that was given was that his daughter had committed suicide, and so he could no longer stand to stay away from his family working on the movie, but it was mostly done, and that he himself had brought in Joss Whedon. That's a possibility, and I think it was used to make fans feel better about the fact that such a big change was happening in the last-minute processes of the movie, and that is something to be concerned about, but we all kind of took their word for it. Figured he was going to be filming a very limited amount of reshoots, but there was talk of snappy dialogue, and Joss Whedon's thing is snappy dialogue. Comedic dialogue, supposedly interplay between characters that makes them more relatable, or people we like better, and apparently none of us liked the characters before, so now we need an infusion of the Whedon campy wit and humor in order to make this movie better. And all of that sounded possible, and all of that sounded okay, but it was concerning. Everyone was concerned before we saw the movie because of this crazy amount of change that was supposedly going to happen, although it was going to be a small amount. Now, when you see the movie, and I'm assuming you have seen the movie at this point, but I'm not talking spoilers now, I am going to talk about what everybody was worried about that, in my opinion, came to fruition. It seems to me, by looking at it, and you can tell this by the amount of times Henry Cavill's face is messed up by bad CGI. You can tell by the amount of bad CGI is in the villains. You can tell by the amount of bad CGI is in the villain's powers and effects and things that he does toward the end of the movie. And you can tell by the way something as simple as Batman is treated, in his dialogue, in his actions, in his attitude, and in the way he fights parademons, that it's likely not, I have no proof of this, but when you watch it, you can feel it. It's likely not Snyder. It's not the way he films things. It's not the way he treated Batman. It's not the way he treated Superman. These guys weren't cracking jokes every minute. There wasn't a lot of sexual tension. There weren't a lot of uncomfortable moments with Diana being talked about as a sex object. And this happens now. A lot of people are saying, oh, obviously all the up-the-butt shots of Wonder Woman are Snyder because that's what he does. I didn't really notice that in the other movie that he had Diana in. I didn't notice it with Martha. I didn't notice it with Lois. I didn't notice it with any other woman in either of the two movies in the DCEU universe that we have seen so far from Snyder, but suddenly we have many, 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 many more that people are complaining about. I actually don't think it's as bad as everyone is saying. There were a couple, but also there were many shots of the whole league from behind like that, or men from behind like that. So I don't know, I'm not certain that anybody was necessarily purposely shooting from that way, but that's something everyone's talking about. And lots of fans that I have heard from are super stoked, and I think the reason for that is because there are a number of good, cool, super scenes in this movie, including Superman scenes, including Flash scenes, who I didn't expect to like, including Wonder Woman scenes. Everybody has great moments in the movie, and there's a good amount of drama and action, but there really is nothing serious happening in the movie. The movie's tone is completely different, and the comedic forced dialogue is definitely Whedon, as Zack Snyder has never done any of that. Whether you like him or not, his movies have been dour and dark and serious and not very comedic at all, though Lex Luthor added some comedy and most people didn't like that in the last movie. This is, I wouldn't say non-stop attempted laugh a minute, but I would say most of what is in there doesn't really make you laugh, but they are attempting to. And Whedon's good at this. We've laughed in Marvel movies almost exclusively every time, but this is forced into places where it doesn't necessarily belong and rushed at the last minute in the final stages of a movie that was already complete. So it doesn't really work. And and there's a lot of uncomfortable humor, and you come away feeling like these are new characters you haven't seen before. And a lot of people are happy because to a lot of people, they're the characters the way they should have been from the beginning, which is great, but it feels so detached from what we already know that it's almost like we're being introduced to some of them for the first time, because none of them have any of the attitudes or thoughts or feelings or even movements that they've had previously. Thanks everybody for watching. We'll continue with a more proper review of actually what happens in the movie next week. And always, look up in the sky.